While Rome rose in the west and Han China expanded in the east, India built two of history's greatest empires, the Maurya and Gupta Empires. They unified millions, pioneered the concept of zero, and shaped science, philosophy, and mathematics for centuries. Yet despite rivaling Rome in power and influence, most people have never heard their story. That changes today. To understand the Maurya Empire, you need to understand what ancient India looked like before it. The subcontinent was a patchwork of rival kingdoms, janapadas, constantly competing, trading, and warring. It was also an extraordinary intellectual landscape. The 6th and 5th centuries BC produced the Buddha Mahavira, the founder of Jainism, and a vast flowering of philosophical inquiry that challenged the Chi, authority of the Vedic priestly class. The Arthashastra, a treatise on statecraft attributed to the scholar Chanakya, written around 320 BC, is one of the most sophisticated political texts in the ancient world, covering everything from taxation and espionage to foreign policy and economic management. It predates Machiavelli's The Prince by nearly 1800 years and is arguably more comprehensive. It was Chanakya who would architect the rise of India's first great empire, and the man he chose to lead it was a young soldier named Chandragupta Maurya. In 321 BC, Chandragupta Maurya overthrew the Nanda dynasty of Magadha and began a campaign of conquest that would unify most of the Indian subcontinent for the first time in history. His timing was extraordinary. Alexander the Great had just swept through northwestern India in 326 BC, destabilizing the region and leaving a power vacuum. Chandragupta filled it. Within decades, the Maurya Empire stretched from modern Afghanistan and Pakistan in the west across the entire Gangetic Plain and deep into peninsular India, roughly 5 million square kilometers, governing an estimated 50 to 60 million people. It was the largest empire the subcontinent had ever seen, and one of the largest in the world at that time. The empire was administered through a sophisticated bureaucracy divided into provinces, districts, and villages, with a standardized legal code, a professional army, an intelligence network, and a system of roads connecting the empire's extremities to its capital, Pataliputra, on the Ganges. The Greek ambassador Megasthenes, who visited Pataliputra around 300 BC, described a city of extraordinary size and sophistication, rivaling anything in the Mediterranean world. But the most transformative Mauryan ruler was not Chandragupta. It was his grandson, Ashoka. Ashoka the Great ruled from approximately 268 to 232 BC and began his reign as a conventional conqueror. His campaign to subjugate the kingdom of Kalinga, roughly modern Orissa, resulted in a victory so brutal that it reportedly killed over 100,000 people and displaced 3 times as many. And then something almost without parallel in the history of empire happened. Ashoka was horrified by what he had done. He converted to Buddhism, renounced warfare, and reoriented his entire empire around the concept of Dhamma, roughly translated as righteous conduct, compassion, and ethical governance. He had his edicts moral proclamations about religious tolerance, animal welfare, care for the poor, and the responsibilities of rulers carved into rocks and pillars across the empire, some of which still stand today. The Ashokan pillars are among the most remarkable surviving monuments of the ancient world. Ashoka also dispatched Buddhist missionaries across Asia to Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, and the Mediterranean, transforming Buddhism from a regional Indian religion into one of the world's great faiths. His influence on Asian civilization is immeasurable. The Maurya Empire fragmented after Ashoka's death. For several centuries, India returned to its pattern of competing kingdoms. Then, beginning around 320 AD, a new dynasty rose from the same Gangetic heartland, the Guptas. Under Chandragupta I, Samudragupta, and Chandragupta II, ruling from roughly 320 to 415 AD, the Gupta Empire reunified much of northern and central India and presided over what historians call the Golden Age of India. The intellectual achievements of the Gupta period are staggering. The mathematician and astronomer Aryabhata, writing around 499 AD, calculated the value of pi to 4 decimal places, proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis, and explained solar and lunar eclipses correctly, nearly 1,000 years before Copernicus. His work Aryabhata is one of the foundational texts of mathematics and astronomy. Gupta-era scholars also formalized the decimal positional number system, the system of numerals, including the concept of zero, that the Arab world later transmitted to Europe, where it became known as Hindu-Arabic numerals. Every calculation you have ever made uses a system invented in Gupta India. In literature, the poet and playwright Kalidasa, often called the Shakespeare of Sanskrit, produced masterpieces including the Abhinanasakuntam. In medicine, Sushruta's surgical texts described procedures including rhinoplasty. In metallurgy, the iron pillar of Delhi, forged around 400 AD and still standing without significant rust, demonstrates a mastery of metallurgy not matched in Europe for over a millennium. The Gupta Empire declined in the 5th and 6th centuries AD under pressure from the Hunna invasions, a branch of the same nomadic confederacy that was simultaneously dismembering Rome in the west. By 550 AD, the empire had fragmented. But unlike Rome, whose legacy was transmitted directly into European civilization through the church, Latin, and law, Indian classical civilization was largely filtered out of Western historical consciousness during the colonial period, when European scholars systematically undervalued non-European achievements. Only in the 20th century did historians begin to restore the Maurya and Gupta empires to their rightful place in world history. The number you just thought of, whether it was 1, 100, or 1,000,000, you expressed it using a system invented in India over 1,500 years ago. The concept of zero, without which modern mathematics, computing, and science are impossible, was formalized in Gupta India. The philosophical traditions of Buddhism and Jainism, which today shape the lives of hundreds of millions across Asia, were born on the Indian subcontinent and spread by Mauryan missionaries. Ashoka governed 50 million people with a philosophy of compassion, at a time when Rome was still a republic, fighting its way across Italy. Aryabhata calculated the Earth's circumference more accurately than most Europeans would for another 1,000 years. History is not a story that happened only in Greece and Rome. It happened everywhere, simultaneously, in parallel civilizations of equal complexity and achievement. And the sooner we understand that, the better we understand ourselves.